It's the fifth Wednesday. I've got nothing.
It's time for the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. The podcast you look forward to for all of your news and reviews of the best comic books hitting stands. Whether it's DC, Batman, Wonder Woman, Marvel, Spider-Man, Image, Spawn, Saga, Boom, Once and Future, Power Rangers, or whatever book or publisher you follow. We cover them all here. This is the place for you. That's right. It's for everyone. This is the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. Let's get it.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. I am your host, Theo. Got a good episode for you despite the fact that I am recording this after a fifth Wednesday of the month. We finally get to sit down with Stephanie Williams to talk about some of her projects and what she's doing and her love of comics. And despite the fact that we do have a fifth Wednesday in the month of April, I was able to come up with a list of 5 books that were my favorite from this past week. So, not going to take too much time. We're just going to go ahead and jump right on into it. My interview with Stephanie Williams. Like I said, this was something I've been wanting to do for a while. We going back to January of this year, but with travel and the cons that she's been doing, including doing Fan Expo in New Orleans, she just had a busy schedule. And when we were first scheduled to finally meet, she was a little bit under the weather, so allowed her some time to recuperate for that. So we finally were able to meet, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Stephanie as much as I did. But again, once we get back, I'll go over my top 5 for this past week as we go into New Comic Book Day. And because of New Comic Book Day, I was able to really get my top 5 for the week. So here is my conversation with comic book writer Stephanie Williams, and I will see you all on the other side. Hey, it is Theo. I am sitting here with comic book writer Stephanie Williams. Wait, let me correct myself. Ringo nominated comic book writer Stephanie Williams. Stephanie, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. And you know what? I'm gonna claim that what's going on right now is submissions for nominations, but you've already said it. So
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
gonna
claiming
claim
it.
I'm
I am.
claiming the nominations.
Yeah, I am good at prophesizing certain things. Like
All right.
there were certain books that came out this week that I prophesized on the Batman Universe comic podcast, and they came true. So if you all need winning lottery numbers, just let me know.
I'll be hitting you up after this because yes.
So I've been a follower of yours for a while, and while my first exposure to Stephanie Williams was in comics and reading primarily Nubia,
hmm
I then was perusing webtoons and I came across the name Stephanie Williams. I wonder if this is the same person. And then I fall upon Parenthood Activated. And then after I read Parenthood Activated, I came across But What If Though?
hmm
And I got a problem with both of them. And they're all the same thing. They ended too soon. I
I
mean,
know.
when when you look at the scenes in Parenthood Activated, I mean, we're both parents. I mean,
hmm
and those experiences you just makes you think, yeah, superpowers. I mean, do you wish you could have done more on Parenthood Activated?
I do. It's funny because both of those things kind of abruptly ended because my professional career took off in a way that I didn't anticipate that. Not to say that I was just making comics for fun, because essentially I was, but I'm not gonna lie. It's nice to be able to do it for a living. And that's essentially what happened. So in that, my I guess my focus kind of changed, my priorities, because the things that I had to get done were the things that were paying. So I believe Parenthood Activate, I've circled back to in a way with this new project that I'm doing with Mad Cave, which is one of my first creator-owned series. So it does kind of pick up that vibe, at least the whole thing of I don't know, parent perspective and just kind of leaning into the whole mom life thing. But yeah, like I wish I could have done more, and I don't, who knows? I could circle back at any time. But what if though a little bit more tricky, just because it's playing with different IPs and a lot of those characters I've had the chance to like write for officially, but I do have something else in the works that is also in that same vibe and energy of But What If Though and also Living Heroes that I'm very excited about that will be happening at DC Comics. So hopefully you all will get the full rundown of that soon because that'll be out in July.
Great. So you mentioned your work with Mad Cave, and I want to talk a little bit about that because
Mhm.
I want to talk about Bitchcraft, which is
Yes.
the webtoon series that was done by your best friend Aaron Reese, who recently passed. It was right
Mhm.
around the time of Fan Expo in New Orleans
Yes.
when they passed, and their dream of having a book published is coming to fruition because Mad
Mhm.
Cave has announced it's coming out in June. So knowing your relationship with Aaron, he was your best friend.
Mhm.
When that news came out, how did it hit you?
Hard. Very bittersweet because Mad Cave would be it's something that we talked about a lot because that was going to be our first both for our first creator owned series coming out at the same publisher. Like how rare is that? And it's something that we talked about often celebrating together because I think our books would have been coming out in succession. So when that news came out, I was both, really proud, but also really, I couldn't reach for my phone to be able to call, FaceTime. Like we spoke every day, sometimes literally nothing. But I don't know. I just really wish that I could have gotten their reaction from this finally coming out. Is something that they worked on tirelessly, even when they were in pain. It was really a labor of love, and I couldn't be more prouder of Aaron and also Bitchcraft. And I just can't wait for it to be out into the world. And I'm also thankful that it's going out into the world because after they passed, like there's many ways that this could have gone. Mad Cave could have shelved the project, but thankfully they didn't. And that was actually one of the first things that was on my mind after they passed was like, let me get in touch with James and let them know what's going on, and hopefully we can still move forward with Bitchcraft. And that's exactly what they've done, and they've just been so amazing in such a difficult time.
Yeah, I definitely plan on picking it up in June actually I plan on ordering it now. I've already ordered it from DCBS, but
Yes.
I've read it on Webtoons, which is where it was first released, and
Mhm.
you can tell a person's labor of love when they put into a project, and you clearly see that in
Yeah.
Aaron's work on Bitchcraft. So again, it is out in June. Make sure you pick it up. Um, I am, and Stephanie got some stuff at Mad Cave that'll be coming out as well. So I'll be following that also. So I do have some questions.
Mhm.
Between all that you've done, and I know you've recently celebrated a milestone over at Amazon as well, doing
Yeah.
work with them, with everything that's going on, and you're a mom and you're a wife, how do you unwind? How does Stephanie Williams take a break when it's time to take one?
Well, through trial and error over the last few years and just trying to figure out what work-life balance looks like for me. Now I try not to work past 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. I don't do that. Definitely don't work weekends unless I have to,
Mhm.
which has been a rare occurrence lately. And I really love romance novels. Like that is my kryptonite next to comics. I just recently broke down and started listening to them on Audible and Libby, which I didn't want to do at first because I don't know. I was just being some kind of way. I'm like, I don't want anyone reading these scenes to me. But after talking to a friend who I went to high school with, we still keep in touch. And she was telling me how she had just gotten to listening to romance novels on audio. And I was like, well, girl, I got a list for you of books if you want to check them out. And through her kind of telling me about her experience, I was like, you know what? I think I might join you. So for the last, I want to say 2 months now, for me, like while I'm either cooking or just kind of cleaning or whatever, just kind of decompress for the day, like I've been listening to romance novels on Libby and Audible, and it has been quite the
I was
experience.
gonna ask, is it what you expected?
It is what I expected, but also kind of good too. There was a Beverly Jenkins, her contemporary stuff that I had started listening to. One of them is called The Edge of Dawn, and there's also The Edge of Midnight. The narrator is really great, but I just really love her writing. So I found myself smiling while like listening to it. Just because she's just such a great storyteller. But then there have been times when I've been listening and I've been like, wait, oh my God, like maybe I need to cut this off because this is a little explicit and I don't know how I feel about someone reading that to me. So it's been both fun and also just kind of like, okay, will not be listening to this in the car. So it's been a fun experience. It's just been a funny one at that. So my friend and I have been able to kind of bond a little bit more of that because I'm like, girl, how you got me listening to this?
So there will definitely be no Zane in your
Oh,
playlist.
absolutely not. No. And funny, I have not read any like Zane or Eric Jerome Dickey or anything like that since high school. Which is funny because a lot of that is what I read. But now no, it's been more the newer authors and of course the OGs, Beverly Jenkins, Brenda Jackson, Maureen Smith, Danielle Allen. More recently, I fell in love with her books and Reese Ryan and stuff. So the Rebecca Witherspoon is another one. Like the romance community, like they hold it down. Like I have mad respect for all of those women, especially the Black women who are in that space. A lot of my storytelling inspiration comes from them because to be able to tell a story where people know how it's going to end, but still be able to captivate your audience from beginning to end, like that's nothing to sneeze at. Like that is knowing your craft. Those women know how to write. So I will always take my hat off to our romance writers.
Okay, yeah, I've tried Audible one time in my life, and like you, the idea of somebody reading something to me just doesn't. I'm like, yeah, I can't get this. Where's that damn book? Give it to me, you know?
For
Um,
like sci-fi though, that's where so that was what it for me. Like sci-fi, like a lot of the sci-fi books was like my heavy thing. I can get down with that. It was just the other stuff. I'm like, I don't know if I want you to read that to me. But yeah.
okay, so when Theo's not reading comics, he's reading history. So
Yes.
no,
Oh
history.
no, you gotta pick
Yeah,
that up.
yeah, my degree's in history, so I am picking up John Hope Franklin.
Yes.
I'm picking up those books. I'm yeah, I'm picking up Cornell West, and I can't. The idea of having it read to me just no. I tried it once, and I'm like, that is not for me.
Listen, I understand.
So you have been writing across the comic book spectrum on both DC and Marvel. What's been the funnest character that you've written?
So far, I'm gonna cheat because the character that I'm writing right now has been the project I'm working on is insanely fun, and it's been Diana. It has
Okay.
been Miss Wonder Woman herself. And when this project is announced, you'll understand why. But She has actually been the funnest to write. Next to that, I would say would be, of course, Moon Girl, just because she's just so dope.
Hmm.
Absolutely love writing her. And then I guess third would be Nubia. Like I can't leave my girl out, just because she is just so stoic in nature, but also at the same time, will, tell you what you need to know or let her hands speak for her. But yeah, Diana has been the funnest so far.
Okay. Who's been the most complicated?
Ooh, Storm.
And I don't mean that in the bad way, but just, you know, knowing the history
Yeah.
and the voice the character has always had. Who's been the most complicated? So not necessarily difficult, but
Mhm.
complicated.
I would say Storm, and like I only wrote her for the 8 pages that I did for that backup story that I did for Scarlet Witch 2, but even in that, you have a character who can sometimes be just polarizing within the comics community, just because of, this, either her regalness or just her portrayal sometimes rigid, and I don't think that should always be the case. Also, she has her fans are her fans, like they stand her down. So how do you write something that is going to both speak to the character as we know her in the comics, but also speak to the character that people believe that they know through proxy and reading her stories? So them 8 pages, they definitely gave me some trouble because I was limited, and I just wanted to make sure that I was still, presenting a Storm that folks were familiar with, while also reintroducing this element that was always often forgotten about her, which was her magic. Like that, like Storm is definitely part of the sisterhood. So trying to fit that in. So Storm, I would say, was probably the most difficult to write.
Who's your bucket list character?
Oh, so my bucket list character is definitely Vixen. Uh, yes, but right, right next to Vixen, I would say would be actually Wonder Man and Beast, and I put those two together because I've always enjoyed their friendship. It was something that was really prominent in their appearances together in the 80s and a little bit in the 90s. I want to, I don't know, like I want to write a Beast and Wonder Man, kind of bro comic, limited series, of course, but them just kind of hanging out. But Miss Vixen, I would love to write Mari. Especially just because I find, her access to the red so interesting. I'm actually working on a cosmic horror that's not related to her. It's a creator-owned cosmic horror, but I pray that once that's out and people can see what I can do, like the Vixen cosmic horror that I want to write will be an instant green light. That is my wish.
So I'm just gonna put this out there. I'm gonna pitch for you. If you aren't following Stephanie on Threads right now, you need to be doing that. And I will have a link in the show notes that you can follow on all her socials. But it is a joy, and I just gotta ask, is the email still burning on that pitch for Vixen?
It's so that pitch has been sent. So that
All
pitch
right.
is sitting there, waiting for its time to shine. And I'm just really hoping that this project that I'm doing with Ignition Press will be well, yeah, we got to give her this.
All right. So are you happy Wonder Man is back? He's made his appearance back in the pages of West Coast Avengers. So that should be fun if we can somehow get him and Beast together again. Because I was a fan of Wonder Man too, and I'm excited about the movie coming out this year
Yeah.
from at the MCU as well. Um, I don't want to ask this question because I don't want you to spoil anything.
Okay.
But when we look at your current projects, which I want to ask this in a way because I don't want to put you in a position where you're picking one over the other.
No, it's okay.
Um, what does your schedule look like? What do you focus more on your current projects right now?
Um, honestly, it's whoever's deadline is closest. You know, I don't know what it has been about this year, but I've been hyper efficient. It's been a mix of things. One, I'm not on the phone gabbing with Aaron all day, so that probably has helped. But also, my focus is really just I've really thrown myself into my work. So it's really whatever deadline is up close and next. And right now I don't have anything to do because I've finished things before the deadline, which is kind of like really unheard of for me. And I'm not that I was ever late, but it was usually like, I turn it in on the day that it's due, not a week or two in advance. So I've already told my editors like, hey, like this is an anomaly. Like, don't expect this moving forward. But I don't know, it might stick. But it's really prioritizing deadlines. Because I'm working on like 4 or 5 different things at the same time. So it's whatever stage something is in. Right now, I'm working on an outline for the next issue for a project while also doing revisions for another project. And then coming up with, actually writing out a script. So I'm always at some different stage in the comic making process all at the same time, which sounds like it could be a lot, and it can, but once you kind of get a science to things and you use your outlines, it's not too bad. But for me, it's always prioritizing, deadlines, because that's what gives me like my goal posts.
And you have a newsletter also that
Hmm.
fans can follow. How can they follow that on Beehive?
So yeah, you just search that stuff Williams on Beehive. I usually post it to my socials. I know I've been a little MIA on socials for the last week or so, and that probably might continue just because of my schedule, but you can follow it there, or I'll post, on my accounts. If you go to my main website, www.stuff Well, wow, www.whystuff.com. I actually need to update it with a link to that, but that'll be up before probably by the time you guys are listening, but you can follow that. That's where I've been trying to like, keep the updates and everything. I actually need to get my newsletter out for this month. So hopefully that's out by the time folks are listening to this episode.
Okay, so again, you're a very busy person. You've been doing a lot of con stops this year. You
Yeah.
visit New Orleans, which is my hometown, of course, and I believe you were in Cleveland already,
Hmm.
and Philly is around the corner.
Yeah.
You're busy. How has that been? Because I know the very first time I met you was at Baltimore, and
Hmm.
then we met again at Heroes Con, and those have been the locations that I'm used to seeing. But you're popping up all over the place, from the smallest of events to the larger ones. How has that
Yeah.
experience been?
I love it. Comic conventions are my time to kind of replenish the well, because that's when I get a chance to interact with folks, and it's a little different from being online. Something about that, that in real life exchange, it just hits a little different. Because normally people who are coming to your table are either curious as to what you're doing or already fans of what you're doing. So to have folks come and give me my flowers is something that I will always cherish, because, whether I work right for the big two or not, sometimes it can feel like what I'm doing is like just going out into the void. So it's nice to have folks come and say, hey, like this thing that you wrote, really enjoyed it. Actually, when I was at Cleveland, there was a guy who brought me, there was a Spider-Man comic that I guess was reprinted for Halloween. I wrote like a 4-page Moon Girl story for in the back. And he was like, yeah, like this was my first introduction to you. And I just really loved it. And I've loved reading your work ever since. And I don't know, that meant a lot to me because I could have written that 4 page, comic as a, whatever. It was just a check, but it never feels that way. That's why everything I write, no matter how long it is, how short it is, I put my all into it because you just never know what someone's first introduction to you is. So that was a nice reaffirming moment to say, hey, like even the smallest things you do is seen and appreciated. So conventions, I don't know, like they're great. I get to meet people like you too. So like it's conventions are definitely this is why I'm here, this is why I'm doing it. And it makes some of those frustrations kind of worth it.
Okay. And it's also a fun experience for that son of yours as well. Because I
Oh
remember,
yes, he's gonna be on the tour, convention tour this summer.
all right, I can't wait to meet him again, especially if you're at San Diego. I remember when I first met him, it was at uh Heroes Con.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, Mom, I'm kind of bored. And you're like, okay, but he's older now. And again, if
Hmm.
you're following Stephanie on socials, he has a lot of influence on you these days, doesn't
Oh,
he?
yes. Yes. In fact, I got a character design the other day, and before I even emailed the editor back, I was like, "Hey, like, what do you think of this?" And he was like, enthusiastic thumbs up. So I just sent my editor back, like, "Well, my 9-year-old really loves it, so I think we're doing the right thing." We're actually going to be doing a panel together at Heroes Con that I'm excited about. It's a kids and parents panel, but basically he'll be doing a live demonstration of him making a comic. So he'll be doing a comic page. He'll talk about his process, and then we'll also kind of talk about how parents can get involved in their child's creativity and different activities that they can do. Something as simple as watching a movie together and talking about it afterwards. He and his class just read Wild Robot, and of course we watched the movie. So we had conversations about that, which was really fun. Like he is my movie buddy. Like my husband kind of watches movies. He watches them, but no, my son is like my TV show and movie buddy because we have a lot of similar interests and the same humor, which might be good or bad depending on who's on the laughing end. But he's my ride or die when it comes to that.
What does he have you playing today?
He has been trying to get me to play Minecraft, which I refuse because Minecraft makes me sleepy because it's so, mostly relaxing if you're not playing on I guess, the mode where you have the hearts and you gotta like try to stay alive. So he's been trying to get me to do that. I'm like, no, we can play Mario Kart because if mommy plays Minecraft, I'm gonna be asleep in 20 minutes in. So we've been playing Mario Kart, gearing up for the Switch 2, and he's been watching me play Pokemon Snap because I recently started playing that again. So Pokemon Snap, Mario Kart, and Minecraft, unfortunately.
Well, my granddaughter is 10, and no, Papa, I don't want to play any of those things. I am just get me my Stanley Cup and my telescope and leave me alone.
You know where
Go,
respect.
huh? Oh,
I
she
said
is,
respect.
yeah, she is everything. She reminds me everything of her mother, and her mother can't stand it, of course. Um, Stephanie Williams, look, okay, we have reached the end of our conversation, but as always, before we end our episodes, we go into rapid fire. Two
Okay.
choices. You get to pick one. There are no right or wrong answers. Let me know when you are ready.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay. First up, Joe Million or Jessica Cruz?
Jessica Cruz.
Okay. Nintendo or PlayStation?
PlayStation.
Okay. Batman or Superman?
Superman.
Okay. I don't know about that one.
Fair.
Fair. Captain America or Iron Man?
Ooh, Cap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would it make a difference if it was Steve or Sam?
No, it doesn't make a difference.
Okay. Last but not least, and this is the question that goes to everyone, Batman the Animated Series or Justice League Unlimited?
Justice League Unlimited.
It's tough.
It's it's very tough. If I can just speak to my Superman real quick, just because of his interaction with Vixen the first time that she's introduced, I will always love that story. So Clark gets it because of that. And then Justice League Unlimited because of just the messiness of it all.
the
Wayne
messiness of the
McDuffie was
love
in this.
triangle.
Yeah, like I was, I was young. I didn't know what was going on. I know I didn't like it, but
Yeah, that love triangle between John
I
Kerry
hated it.
and Shahira was just you would come
I was
home to watch
irrationally,
it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
come
I
home
was
to watch it
irrationally
every day,
mad.
but
Yeah, I was irrationally mad at like 10 or however old I was watching. I didn't know why. When I got older, I understood why. But I think that Justice League Unlimited really solidified my love of superhero stuff because it just reaffirmed, like, girl, this is soap operas. This is your stories in the same way The Bold and the Beautiful is for Granny and Mama. So yeah.
okay, so I gotta ask, since you bring up Bold and the Beautiful, have you watched Beyond the Gates yet?
I have not, but trust me, it is on my to watch list.
It is on my list too. So, and yes, Theo watched soap operas because Theo lived with his grandmother most of his life, and her sequence was literally Young and the Restless at 11,
Mm-hmm.
News at noon, Bold and the Beautiful at 12:30. Before it was Bold and the Beautiful, then it was As the World Turns. And if you
Yes.
touched that TV before God and Light went off, boy, you're dead.
Yes.
So yeah, so Theo has watched his fair share of soaps, and when the news came out about Beyond the Gates, I'm like, wait a minute, I gotta get into this. So yes, it is
Uh-huh.
it is on the DVD. It is on the DVR to pick up and look at. So Stephanie Williams, thank you so much. I know you are a busy person. You got con events that you're going to be going out to. I hope to see you in San Diego, and if not San Diego, I hope to see you in New York. Uh,
Oh yeah.
because since I won't be, because I found out I won't be at Heroes Con. I was planning on it,
Oh,
but yeah, work.
I get it.
Yeah, the bill paying work has some things that's lined up for me. But thank you so much for joining me here on the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. Truly appreciate it.
Yeah, I look forward to coming back.
All right, yeah, I will definitely have you back. So again, I want to go ahead and thank Stephanie Williams for taking the time to sit with me, especially after being sick a while back. I really enjoyed the conversation. Wish her the best of luck in getting that Ringo nomination. I am claiming it for her for Moon Girl and Double Dinosaur. I will have links to her socials. Again, if you are not following her on social media, particularly Threads and Instagram, particularly Threads, it is something to see. I really enjoy reading her posts when she's able to do so. But again, also sign up for her newsletter as well, and I'll have the link to that as well. But again, it's a fifth Wednesday here to end out the month of April. But despite that fact, I was able to put together a top five for this week, partly due to the fact that it's Free Comic Book Day on Saturday, May 3rd, and I was able to peruse some of those issues as well. And because of that, I was able to pick an issue that's coming out on Saturday that I am including in my top five. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into my top five. All right, in the number five spot, Kill Train number four, written by Olivia Quatero Briggs, with art from Martina Neosi over at Mad Cave Studios. This is the penultimate issue of this five-parter, and all right, I've been following it from the beginning. It's never been able to crack into the top 10, or And this time, even if we had more books, I could see this still breaking and being in the spot that it is, simply because how everything has turned out. Uh, Vanessa is on the verge of reaching the final car with her and her fellow mates from the first issue that have survived everything thus far. And as of course, Drew, if you're reading this issue, she has been having somewhat of these psychotic breaks where she is losing touch with reality, and she's seeing events from her past, and she's seeing people that she's been involved with at some point in her life. And part of it has been good in that it has allowed her to remain alive on the kill train. But on the opposite end, it's also been part of the reason why individuals have died on the kill train. So we now see she is living a life where, or she's seeing a life where she is actually the person that is being focused on, her and her ex-husband, and she's somewhat living a different life, not the life that she been living before getting on the train that fateful day. And it causes her to again realize what could have been. She realizes that she doesn't like this version of herself, and she goes to really end it all. And of course, when she does all these things, she is actually taking out the people that are on that particular car of the kill train, taking out other passengers. But those breaks actually help her, and just like the previous issues and the previous cars, it does as well, as she takes out another killer who's on the kill train. But in the end, she turns around and she sees that her fellow mates who have been following her since the first issue, those who have survived, they're now dead. And she also realizes that one of the injured, deathly injured, is her best friend Colin. And as she talks to her and tries to comfort her, we get the big, mind blowing realization that Colin has been dead all this time. Everything that Vanessa has been seeing since issue 1, getting on that train, has been a vision. And we get the backstory of why Vanessa makes the decision to get on the train that day. And the biggest thing was news that Colin had been murdered on the previous train that day. And that kind of broke her. And at that point, she kind of figured she wanted to be on a kill train to kind of relive what Colin may have been. But, I don't know if it was actually to go out to do what she's been doing for these past 4 issues in taking out the hired murderers on the kill train. But she is reaching the final car. She is determined to get to the end and to get off the train alive. But she's going to be doing it all alone, as she's actually have been doing all this time in getting from one car to the next. And that was just a mind-blowing reveal for me getting to the end of issue 4. So we shall see what happens in issue 5 as she makes her way to the last passenger car and to see what's in store. It's almost as if the way that Olivia Quintero Briggs is writing this, perhaps Vanessa has a death wish. She doesn't want to make it off, but maybe she does, considering she has a daughter at home waiting on her. But yeah, the realization that all this time everyone was already dead, including Cowan. Was really, really mind blowing and really a shock for me. A little bit about the art. It is if you're a fan of gore and suspense and terror, uh, the art from Martina Neosi will be right up your alley. It was really good. I really enjoyed it from the standpoint of what it's for, and that means a lot for someone who is not huge into the horror genre. But I've been following this story from the beginning, and I can't wait for the final issue to see what happens to Vanessa by the time we get to the end. But that is my number 5 book for this week. Kill Train number 4 from writer Olivia Quatero Briggs with art from Martina Neosi over at Mad Cave Studios. All right, we are going to stay at Mad Cave Studios for my number 4 book. And my number 4 book is actually a book that's out on Saturday with Free Comic Book Day. And that is the Free Comic Book Day issue of Speed Racer, Speed Racer number 0. And that is written by David Pepos with art from David Tinto. Again, that's at Mad Cave Studios. So we've already been knowing about the upcoming series that Mad Cave is doing. It's coming out in August. And so this Free Comic Book Day issue pretty much introduced us to what we're going to be getting with that series. And so we introduced to Speed, we introduced to Chim Chim and Spraddle. We see glimpses of Pops, and we get a bit of everything that we know as fans of Speed Racer. What's going to be coming to the comic book. And as Mad Cave has been talking about with this series from the start, we do see a lot of the Fast and Furious and Tokyo Drift and all those racing car things that we've known over the past few years in the movies. We kind of see a lot of this in what David Pepos is doing. So it was a real good read, real quick read to introduce those who may not be familiar with Speed Racer to the character. It's very modernized when you consider what Spraddle is doing with Chim Chim as they record everything Speed is doing. But I'm excited about issue number 1 that's coming out in August. I'm planning on getting David Pepos back on the podcast to talk not only about Speed Racer, but a bunch of other things that he's working on. He's doing a lot of stuff, including a few things over at Mad Cave Studios. So I'll be looking to get him back on sometime in the month of May to talk about those things. But this issue actually had 2 stories. And the second story was a great reveal because I went back and I get all of the press releases from Mad Cave and there was nothing announced. However, the second story we get is a story from Mark Russell with Chris Batista. Chris Batista, the artist over at Gotcha Man. And this one is on Racer X. And of course, if you're a fan and a follower of Speed Racing, we know that Racer X is Speed's brother. And so we get to the end of this story. And again, it's more or less an introduction to the character and all that he's been doing in this new world of Speed Racer. But the surprise and the reveal is that in September we're going to be getting a Racer X series that will be written by Mark Russell. So I'm excited about that, getting to get a story not only about Speed but also about his brother X. And again, if you don't know the history and the story of Racer X and how he came to be, you need to follow up on that. He was the racer of the family before the accident that many thought had killed him. But of course, he didn't die, as most people don't do in comics. But he donned the mask of Racer X, and uses that to not only do his own thing, but also to keep an eye on his brother Speed. But I'm excited about both of these series and can't wait to see what Mark Russell does with this character. I've been a fan of Mark Russell since he did Prez over at DC, and then he did Wonder Twins as well, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But yeah, this was a great read, great introduction to both of these series that are going to be coming out from Mad Cave, and I'm excited to see where it goes in this new universe of Speed Racer and Racer X in the month of September. So that is my number 4 book, the Free Comic Book Day issue of Speed Racer, Speed Racer number 0, from David Pepos, David Tinto, Mark Russell, and Chris Batista over at Mad Cave Studios. All right, in the number 3 spot, The Power Company Recharge number 1, written by Brian Edward Hill, or Brian Hill, with art from a slew of great artists. We have art from Kyrie Randolph, Ray Anthony Height, Norm Rapman, Alita Martinez, and Studio Sky Tiger, all at DC Comics. And so we got a glimpse of what we were going to be getting in the DC Power issue. There was the short story that was done by Brandon Thomas, and all of it now is culminating in this one issue where Josiah Power has put this team together. And if you can remember from the DC Power issue, the anthology, he was having issues with getting Black Lightning to join the team. But after some things over at the Watchtower and making sure that things were fine with his family, Black Lightning decided to join in. And so now we see the team put together, and that team is, of course, Black Lightning as the leader, Batman, Jace Fox, the Signal, Duke Thomas, and Vixen, all coming together to join the team. I wasn't sure. I would have thought that what's his name from Shazam would have made his way over, considering Vixen was trying to talk him into it as well. Maybe he joined somewhere down the line. But we get the story. They are heading out to Atlanta, where a friend of Duke's has been killed, and they're going to investigate it. Of course, this friend of Duke is a meta, and since Absolute Power, of course, Josiah Power has been, trying to reverse all the things that Amanda Waller has done, specifically with how society is viewing metas. And so he put this team together to make that happen. And this is the new Power Company. Now, of course, Duke had to do some talking in order to get Jace to join the team. And he isn't all that happy, considering Duke did a little bit of manipulation to get him to show up. But Jace Fox is being Jace Fox. If you've followed I Am Batman and that series along the way, you know that he has always been a hard ass. And it's the same here in this story, as they seek to track down the individual or individuals responsible for the death of Duke's friend. And they figured out, and it was one individual who was kind of working within the realm of the Sons of Liberty. And if you are following, or if you followed the Black Lightning miniseries, you would know that the Sons of Liberty is this anti-meta group that has kind of spread across the country after growing in Metropolis at the end of Absolute Power. So there's this group with Sons of Liberty, but this one individual is kind of a lone wolf in it, and so we see how the team, and in particular, Jace takes this guy down. But I think what we are ultimately getting is they are kind of trying to teach Jace a lesson with regards to being a team player, because there were several times where they could have intervened in helping Jace out, but knowing who he is, Duke basically talks Vixen into backing off and, keeping an eye without keeping an eye on things with Jace. So I think we're going to see more of that as they try to make Jace more of a team player. Of course, Jace doesn't trust anyone, particularly Josiah Power. Uh, but we're going to see how that all plays out. I think ultimately, especially as we get to the end, where instead of saying to be concluded or the end, it says the beginning, I think we'll be getting an announcement of the Power Company, whether it's a miniseries or a regular ongoing. I'm excited for it, especially considering the options out there to write this series. I've been a fan of Brian Edward Hill going all the way back to his days on Postal, and I've followed him all this time. I'm happy he's back in the pages of comics. He kind of took a break from comics to go back into TV. If you didn't know, he was the head writer over on the Titans series over on DC Universe before it became Max, and then it moved over to Max. But now that's ended, he's back in comics, and I am happy to see him back in the world of comics. So the art was just great, and not counting Norm Rapman, I mean, we had a who's who of a black artist on this series, on this issue, and I truly loved every bit of it. Been a huge fan of Alita Martinez and Kyrie Randolph for such a long time, and good to see them getting some work. I hope they'll be getting some more with this series, and just I'm hoping that it'll be announced officially at San Diego Comic-Con this year. But everything is pointing to the Power Company coming back, either in a miniseries or in some type of ongoing series, and I am a-okay with that, especially if we see more Black Lightning and more Vixen. I think those are just two underrated characters that I would love to see more of, and the idea of possibly Brian Hill or Brandon Thomas or both writing that series make me quite excited for it. But that is my number 3 book for the week, The Power Company Recharge, from Brian Edward Hill and a bunch of great artists over at DC Comics. In the number 2 spot, Boy Rivals number 18, written by Robert Kirkman with art from Lorenzo De Felici over at Skybound Image. We get the full reveal of Zerda Trion, the mighty god of Sertonia, and she's not in good shape. If you remember from last issue, we saw where she was pretty tattered. Her body was, missing the bottom from pretty much waist down, and she doesn't think she has the power to continue her mission of uniting the people of Agoria and Zertonia. And so she charges Celia with getting this done, and she activates that AI that was at the center of the planet with her, Vecta Theta, and commands it to give Celia all of her power so that she being Celia can continue in the mission of getting unity to occur simply because of that monster that's at the center of the sacred ring, and to kill it, to revive it and to kill it in this weakened state. But there's a lot going on in this issue, and it is a really quick read as you get to it. So if you can remember, the Zaliak has been with the witches of Zerda, and they've basically been bringing him through this trial that basically is meant to make him stronger. And we see where they finally feel they have him in the place he needs to be the true ruler that Zertonia needs. And they charge him with leading the world into, or leading the Zertonians, and making sure that unity occurs. But while that is going on, Proximus has made his way to the palace and has basically taken over the throne. And so we know that a battle is coming between Zaliak and Proximus. And we know the first time that they met, Proximus lost that battle, which is how Zaliak was able to basically assume the throne of the premier. So we shall see what happens when that battle happens, because I'm pretty sure when Zaliak returns, Proximus isn't just going to get up from that throne and give it back to him. But again, there's a whole lot going on in just those 22 to 30 pages of the issue. And we have Derek, who is with his father Dulin, and he is learning more about why there's always been this understanding between the Zertonians and the Zertonian leader and the Agorian leader to keep the people separated, that unity should never occur. And he blames it on these sacred texts that basically says keep the people apart. And so we don't know who wrote these sacred texts, but it's been passed along generations from leader to leader of each world. And again, it's just to keep everybody separated, to never allow unity to happen for the sake of the people. So we don't know, the truth within that. But, Derek is kind of playing the role of double agent, not only for his father, but also for Elander, who's in prison for treason. And so just a whole lot going on. And of course, we still have Hot Rod and we still have Springer, who are trying to make their way back to Cybertron in Hot Rod's ship. And Springer's not sure if they'll be able to make it in the ship's current condition. But, they're trying to get as much Energon that they can store in that ship in order to try to make their way back to Cybertron. But the real highlight of the issue occurs at the end, which is typical for Void Rivals. And that's where Celia, in her new form, with her new power, reveals herself to Derek and to Dulin on Agoria. And Dulin is so flabbergasted about this, he orders Derek, his son, to take down and to execute Celia. And we know that those two have really created a great relationship amongst themselves. Might be a little bit of a romantic relationship, but they haven't got there yet. But they have an understanding and a true friendship with one another. And now Derek is really being given a true test of loyalty from his dad to strike down the pested Agorian who dares to step ground on Agorian land. So we shall see if the Agorian Derek will do what his dad says and go after these Tony and Celia for breaking sacred land by stepping foot there. But we shall see how that all plays out. So this here actually ends the current arc of this series, and this is all going to be, I believe, volume 3 of Void Rivals, which will be coming out pretty soon. But that is the number 2 book for this week. Void Rivals, number 18, from Robert Kirkman and Lorenzo De Felici, over at Skybound Image. All right, so what title could have knocked Void Rivals, which is usually always my number 1 book? What title could have knocked Void Rivals out of the number 1 spot this week? Well, I am happy as a true Batman fan to say that my number 1 book for this week is the Detective Comics 2025 annual, written by Al Ewing with art from John McCrae, Stefano Raphael, and Fico Ossio, with a backup story written by Joshua Hale Philkoff and art from Mike Norton over at DC Comics. So let's get the backup story out of the way first. It was a really feel-good story where Batman helps this 7th grader solve the mystery of why the students at this school is just freaking out, more or less. Batman thinks that it's some type of attack, and he goes in to investigate. Little does he know that this 7th grader, David, is also investigating to see what's going on. And by the end, we learn that it's not necessarily an attack as Batman originally thought, but we learn through David that the school was built on top of an old scarecrow laboratory, and leftover fear toxin had seeped its way up from the ground into the school, and that this is what caused all the kids to start freaking out. So it was a really feel-good, touching story. It was truly an all-ages story. It wasn't something that was truly meant for kids, and it wasn't too adult oriented, so it really was something that anyone could read, and I really enjoyed that backup story. But the main story from Al Ewing was truly wonderful, and if you haven't listened to my interview that I had with Al Ewing over at the Batman Universe, I'll have the link in the show notes. Please take a listen. It was only about 10-15 minutes, but it gave a lot of insight into how he put this story together as quick as he did. And in the interview, he made it known to me, that, he didn't have a lot of time to put it together, which is part of the reason why they had 3 artists. They wanted to make sure that the issue came out on time. But great story that was really into 3 parts, and it's all based on this mystery. And when was the last time we had a detective story in Detective Comics? It has been a while. I will say probably the early Mariko Tamaki days in her run on the series. But we get this mystery where Batman is drawn to this state-of-the-art bunker where he finds someone dead with a knife in its back. Yet, scrawled on the floor in this guy's blood is, basically a plea to Batman to not solve his murder. And of course, seeing something like that, the Dark Knight is not gonna let that slide, and so he goes on this mission to solve the mystery of who killed this billionaire and why. And so, it takes Batman to England, and in particular York. And again, if you listen to the interview, York is where Al Ewing is from, and he was very excited to include his hometown into the story. But that kind of goes into the second act, which is really like an interlude into the whole story, where you know after Batman gets to England and he gets this book that he's looking for that was also in the bunker. There was only one copy, really made. But of course, when you have these copies of a book, they will always keep a proof at the publisher. So he was able to find that. Uh, but the second act really acts as an interlude to the main story, where he, being Batman, goes out and helps these hostages that are being kept hostage by these metaphysical type angels, who he is able to dispatch of. But the individual who has conjured these beings to come forward, really, is somewhat of a headache to Bruce, but he figures out a way to take him down using his knowledge of York typography to assist him. But after doing that, we get into this final act where Bruce really goes after the the person responsible for the murder of the billionaire, and we learn that this individual was his partner. The guy who, in the background helped start the business. And the whole reason for the murder is because these two billionaires had found in this book a particular formula that, if found to be true, tested and true, could be so earth shattering that it could actually destroy the universe. And so the billionaire partner didn't want that to happen. He didn't want to take the chance that it could be proven true and for life to be destroyed and remade or what have you. And so he tore the page that held the final pieces of this formula, and he destroyed it. And again, there were no other copies other than that. And so, we he gets killed, and of course, Batman, being Batman, goes out to solve the murder, and this guy's partner figure out that's what's going on, and so he uses that to his advantage. Yeah, get Bruce to get this book, and then after he gets this book, I will talk him into coming to save this hostage that I've taken. But of course, Batman, being Batman, he always has his contingency plans, and he takes all of the bad guys out. But in the end, the formula didn't work. All it did was it ended up trapping this guy almost like in this stasis where he's trapped between space and time. But really a good story. It was a wonderful story simply because it brought Bruce into this mode of being the world's greatest detective. And you see it from the beginning, where there's this music that's playing and he picks it up, and hidden within the music is Morse code, and the Morse code spells out Batman, and he's able to track the signal to this underground bunker, and all of these other clues as he's walking through this impenetrable bunker to learn that everything there is automated. And we learned that that's how the guy got killed. His partner basically rigged the bunker to turn on him and to kill him. And he figured it out. And before he died, he wrote the warning to Batman saying, hey, this is all a trap. Don't try to solve my murder. And of course, Batman being Batman does what Batman does, and he becomes the world's greatest detective. But I truly enjoyed having that story in the pages of Detective Comics. It's been a long time since we've had something like that. And hopefully this is a sign for the future. If this was a rehearsal for Al Ewing with becoming a Batman writer, either on Detective or in the main Batman series, I am all game for it, provided he continues to tell stories as he did with this annual. So absolutely enjoyed it. The art was great. This is one of the instances where having multiple artists on one issue really works, despite the reason why, again, they had these multiple artists because they had to get the issue ready. But the story that Al Ewing told actually plays into it really well when you look at each artist taking over one of these individual acts, and that allows just to know exactly where one act is ending and another is beginning. And again, everything just worked out really well. I absolutely love this. When we did our review of it over at the Batman Universe, I want to say I gave it either a 4.5 or 4.25. It was really that good, and I absolutely enjoyed it. And enjoyed it so much so it is my number one book for the week. And that is the Detective Comics 2025 annual from Al Ewing, John McCrea, Stefano Raphael, Pico Ocio, Joshua Hill, Phil Koff, and Mike Orton over at DC Comics. And so, there you have it. My top 5 books for this past week. Kill Train number 4, the free comic book day issue of Speed Racer, which is Speed Racer 0, the Power Company Recharge over at DC Comics, Void Rivals number 18 over at Skybound Image, and my number one book for this past week, the Detective Comics 2025 annual over at DC Comics. And that is going to do it for this episode of the Comic Pen Comic Book Podcast. Again, with there being this 5th Wednesday in the month of April, there weren't as many books that I read, which means there are no honorable mentions. So next time I'm going to be sitting with comic book editor Kristen Simon from over at Mad Cave Studios, and specifically from their Nakama Press, their manga imprint. And we're going to be talking about Infinity Force. For many of you Gotcha Man and Tekka Man and Kashan fans, Infinity Force was that crossover that Tatsunoko did way back when. Mad Cave and Nakama Press are teaming up with Tatsunoko to reprint the first 4 volumes that were actually done in English and released years ago. And they're also going to be releasing volume 5. And they're in the process right now of doing the remaining volumes, which were 6 through 10 of Infinity Force as well. And they're going to be releasing all of them. And we'll finally be getting them over here in the States in English. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about that and the process that they're going through in order to get those other volumes translated and localized so that they can be released here in the States. So volume 1 and volume 2 is going to be released in June. So be on the lookout for that. And we'll be talking about it. We'll be talking about it a little more in that episode. So again, thank you all for joining me. As always, I truly appreciate you listening in and watching here on our YouTube channel. But until then, I will see you next time. That is going to do it for this episode of the Comic Ben Comic Book Podcast. I'd like to thank you all for your continued support of the program. The Comic Ben Podcast, as well as the Comic Book Spot, are a part of the Comic Book Source family of sites and media. You can follow the podcast on Twitter X at comic_Ben, or my personal account at BatmanFan_. _4 life. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. We're all over social media. You can also follow our sister site over at thebatmanuniverse.net for all of your news and reviews in the world of Batman. Tune in next time as we give you more in the world of comic books. Again, we truly appreciate your support. But until we meet again next time, keep reading those comics.